In a mysterious land surrounded by verdant forests and distant mountains, a group of people dressed as adventurers wandered. They suddenly heard a small voice calling out to them. Turning around, they were astonished to find a talking cat attempting to sell them something. The adventurers couldn't believe their eyes, as talking animals were a rarity in their world. The cat proudly presented them with a cherry tomato, but the adventurers were underwhelmed by the offering. They had expected something grand, like legendary weapons or mysterious potions. A simple cherry tomato was something they could easily obtain and consume at any time. However, the cat admonished them, insisting that they would be foolish to judge the tomatoes before appraising their true value. With skepticism, the adventurers inspected the cherry tomato, and their disbelief soon turned to astonishment as they discovered its mythical effects. In an instant, they swarmed the cat, buying up all the tomatoes it had to offer. Curiosity piqued, one adventurer asked the cat where it had acquired such remarkable tomatoes. Grinning enigmatically, the cat replied that the source of the tomatoes was a closely guarded secret. The scene then shifted to a field where rows of cherry tomatoes flourished under the sun. A man plucked a ripe tomato from a plant and, with a determined gleam in his eye, declared, "This is the story of how I became the world's strongest, simply by farming." 10 years ago, on a bustling day in Seoul, a 99-floored black tower mysteriously appeared in the heart of Gangnam. But it wasn't an isolated incident. In total, 100 identical towers appeared simultaneously in cities across different countries. Each nation launched investigations into the tower on their soil, but they could only discern two facts. The tower stood 990 meters high, and it was constructed from an incredibly strong material that could not be penetrated, even by nuclear bombs. Then, one day, something even more extraordinary happened. People who had gone missing began to emerge from the walls of the tower. Reporters swarmed around them, asking how they had ended up inside. The bewildered individuals shared that they had been sucked into a black hole and had awoken on the first floor of the tower. These 100 towers were all interconnected as one, and those who entered were awakened on the first floor, forced to choose a role as either a magician or a warrior. Monsters began to appear on the second floor, and with each level cleared, different rewards were granted. Among these rewards was a special ticket. Only the awakened can enter and exit the tower freely. Ordinary people, however, require the ticket to gain access to the tower and can get awakened. Despite the dangers lurking within, many questioned why anyone would risk entering a tower teeming with monsters and why the towers appeared. Well, no one knew why the towers had been generated, but one thing was certain. Climbing the tower led to unimaginable wealth, as the items found in the tower are priceless. The Awakened Association has announced that the price of Black Tower tickets will be increased from 150 million won to 200 million won due to higher demand than supply. A woman is watching the news on her smartphone in her store when a young man comes to buy vegetables. Expressing her frustration with the situation, she says that people are risking their lives just to earn money, but they want 200 million won for that? Asking him if he thinks the same, he agrees hesitantly that she is right. He was Sejan, a 26-year-old young man trying to save money for something special. He did the math in his head, accounting for tuition fees, interest, rent, and other expenses, and he had managed to save about 12 million won at most. As he gazed at the towering structure, he sighed, wondering when he would ever be able to afford a Black Tower ticket, if he ever could. Refusing to give up, Sejun tried to remain optimistic. There had to be a way to save up more money. He had bought the vegetables at a low price, and he had heard their value was increasing. Inspired by a commercial featuring his favorite idol, Sarang from Korea's top girl group, Moonlight Fairy, he decided to try planting the vegetables at home using an automatic vegetable grower. Sejun believed that if he could save enough to buy a ticket, he might be able to join a good guild when they saw his talent. And if he cleared the tower, then maybe he could propose to Sarang. Lost in his daydream, Sejun strolled along with a goofy grin on his face. But suddenly a black hole appeared behind him in the empty space. Startled, Sejun stared at the black hole, his heart racing with excitement about the possibility of fulfilling his dreams. He closed his eyes, thinking the hole will suck him in like others, but to his surprise, Black Hole hadn't transported him anywhere. Confused and alarmed, he muttered, "Why am I still here?" Before he could contemplate any further, the black hole began to shrink. "No, my future! Sarang!" he shouted in desperation, unwilling to give up on his dreams. Determined to get into the tower at any cost, Sejun charged into the black hole with reckless abandon. As he disappeared into the darkness, he could feel his heart pounding in his chest, wondering where he would end up. When Sejun finally emerged from the black hole, he was confused and disoriented as, on the first floor of the tower, there were supposed to be luxurious chandeliers lighting up the area. But this place was a cave made of rocks, with the only exit was the hole in the cave ceiling. Frustrated, he screamed, "Where the hell am I?" Trapped and alone, our protagonist found himself in a dire situation within the mysterious tower he had longed to enter. He had spent a full day searching for an exit. To his disappointment, the only exit was the hole in the cave ceiling. However, climbing the wall to reach the arched hole in the ceiling seemed impossible unless he was Spider-Man. As he pondered his fate, the sudden ringing of his phone alarm startled him. Despite being lost in this strange place, the alarm assured him that it had been exactly 1 day since he arrived. Hungry and disoriented, he rummaged through his meager supplies to assess his situation. With only a bottle of water, 27 cherry tomatoes, 10 green onions, 7 pumpkin sweet potatoes, and a washed apple, he had to make his provisions last. He decided to eat the apple first, savoring its sweetness and the momentary relief it provided. Each bite of his other raw vegetables brought unexpected pleasure, their flavors and textures a surprising delight. After finishing 1 sweet potato and 5 cherry tomatoes, Sejun picked up a green onion, and then he buried the white part of the onion root in the soft soil where the sunlight entered. Then he planted 2 sweet potatoes on the left side and cherry tomatoes on the right side. Then suddenly, the ground beneath our protagonist's feet trembled violently, the shockwave coursing through his body, causing him to shudder in pain and confusion. "What's going on?" he muttered. As he tried to steady himself, he noticed the light streaming down from the cave ceiling had taken on an eerie blue hue. His eyes widened in disbelief as a colossal black dragon appeared in the sky, its roar reverberating throughout the cavern. The sight of the majestic creature soaring through the air, bathed in the blue light, left him in awe. Before he could fully process the bizarre sight, his vision blurred, and he succumbed to unconsciousness. Upon awakening, our protagonist struggled to regain his bearings. He was astonished to learn that he had been unconscious for 2 whole days. His shock only intensified when he turned around to find a fully grown tree standing behind him. "What the? A tree? Isn't this a green onion that I planted? When did it grow this big? Was the green onion something that could grow this big within 2 days?" he thought. He couldn't help but wonder if the mysterious power within the tower had affected not only the green onion, but also the other plants he had sown. To his amazement, he discovered that 52 cherry tomato sprouts had emerged as well. Determined to make the most of his newfound resources, he began harvesting the enormous green onion. The task was more challenging than he anticipated, but eventually he succeeded in gathering the crop. Curious about the taste of this extraordinary plant, he took a cautious bite. To his surprise, it was incredibly spicy, far beyond its original flavor. Strangely, though, it didn't cause any discomfort in his stomach. "Guess I'm not going to die from hunger now," he thought. Now, he recalled that the sun never set there. Instead, the blue moon phenomenon occurred on the 10th floor, casting the area into temporary darkness. 10 years had passed since the tower's mysterious appearance, and the powerful Phoenix Guild had managed to clear up to the 37th floor. Little information was available about the floors above the 30th. However, he knew from YouTube videos that skeletons roamed floors 2, 10, goblins on 11, 20, orcs on 20, 30, and spider monsters from the 31st floor onwards. What puzzled him was the dragon he had encountered. No one had ever mentioned dragons or lizard-like creatures in the tower. "Which floor is this?" he wondered. Lying down, he wondered if he was on a floor so high that no one had yet reached it. Just then, water droplets fell on his face, and he quickly got up. Was it raining in the tower? He had heard that the weather was almost always pleasant, and as he looked up, the sky was clear. However, he spotted something moving very fast and grew scared, thinking it might be a monster. But the creature he saw approached him, revealing itself to be a cute rabbit drooling over his crops. He was surprised and wondered if the rabbit was a monster too. The rabbit jumped from the ceiling and he rushed to catch it, but the rabbit used his head as a stepping stone and landed safely on the ground. It hopped over to the green onion plants, and Sejun realized that this rabbit was something extraordinary. The rabbit pointed at the green onion plants, and Sejun asked if it wanted to eat them. The rabbit responded, and he understood that it wanted to eat. He broke off a leaf of green onion and handed it to the rabbit, who eagerly accepted. As the rabbit devoured the leaf, he told it that it could have more if it liked. Then he noticed that the plants had already grown back. At this rate, he would have to harvest them twice daily. But the rabbit started saying something loudly, and he realized it wasn't talking to him. He looked up at the cave entrance and saw another rabbit approaching. She landed and handed the first rabbit a straw hat and a watering can, and they both stood before him. He was surprised to see another rabbit and thought that the two might be related. He asked the rabbits if they were married, and they confirmed his suspicion. The next day, we see the rabbits farming and being very happy, while Sejun reflects on how all of this happened. Yesterday, after the rabbits introduced themselves to him, they told him that they wanted to live in the cave. They looked too cute as they tried to persuade him. Sejun felt that he might die from the cuteness overdose and accepted their request on one condition. He told the rabbits that they could not live there for free. If they helped him with farming, he would consider letting them stay. He thought it would dissuade the rabbits a bit, but instead of hesitating, they jumped at him and started cuddling. Now, he is sitting in his spot, watching the rabbits work. He thinks that the rabbits are using their cuteness to control him, but he lets it slide. He asks the rabbits if the tools they were using were special items. The husband rabbit had a watering can that seemed to have an endless supply of water, and Sejun is not sure about it, but it seemed to him that the wife rabbit had a magic pocket that contained all the tools she needed for farming. Sejun says that he is jealous and wishes he had such a wonderful item. The rabbits have completed harvesting the green onions, and they are excited to show them to Sejun. Sejun tells them to dry the green onions and starts inspecting other crops, but the rabbits are looking at Sejun with eager and impatient eyes. They are asking him a question, and Sejun understands what they want. He tells them that they passed his test, and now they can live in the cave. The rabbits jump for joy upon hearing the good news and start talking about something. They rush to a corner of the cave, and Sejun wonders what they are up to now. The wife gives her husband a shovel, and he starts digging. In no time, he creates a home for himself and his wife. The wife places a floral wreath on the door of their new house and welcomes her husband to enter, but he is exhausted from digging and building a house and can barely stand. Sejun approaches them and says that the husband rabbit was great for making a house so quickly. The husband rabbit gives him a thumbs up, but then he feels his wife's hand on his shoulder. She is blushing and cutely pointing at the door, and the husband is terrified. He is scared, but his wife drags him along for some sweet lovemaking. Sejun hears the sounds coming from their house and wishes the husband all the best, but he is crying inside as he is jealous of him for having a wife. That jealousy does not last long, and Sejun walks back to his spot. He says that it was boring to be alone in the cave, and now, thanks to the rabbits, he has someone to help him and something cute to look for. As he says this, Sejun lies down on the dried onion leaves. Smoke starts rising from under his back, and Sejun feels something hot on his back. He jumps into a standing position and rolls on the ground, feeling that his back is on fire. He is wondering what just happened as he gets up, and he sees the reason behind it. The plastic water bottle filled with water was acting as a lens and burning the dried onion leaf. Sejun had knowledge from a renowned survival show, learning that rubbing two dry leaves together might produce fire. He had been trying for hours without success, his frustration and disappointment mounting. Yet just as he was on the verge of giving up, a tiny spark caught his eye, and a thrill of excitement surged through him. Curious about Sejun's activities, the rabbits emerged from their dwelling to investigate. He enlisted their aid in fanning the embers by blowing on the pile of dried leaves while he employed a bottle as a lens. United in their efforts, the trio persevered, and at long last the leaves burst into flames. Triumphant, Sejun reveled in his newfound ability to create fire. Casting a glance at the onion plants, he opted to cook them over the open flame. He roasted one stalk, peeled away the charred exterior, and took a tentative bite. To his amazement, the cooked onion leaf was so delectable that he couldn't help but exclaim in delight. Declaring it delicious, he eagerly began roasting another. Intrigued by the transformative effects of cooking, the rabbits decided to try it for themselves. They too roasted an onion leaf, and as they sampled the sweet treat, their eyes sparkled with the pleasure of experiencing a new and delightful flavor. Sejun was very happy, as, for the first time, he had eaten a full stomach. In the past few days, after discovering fire with the help of the rabbits, Sejun made torches out of green onion leaves and placed them around the cave. This helped him to roam around the cave easily, especially in the dark areas like the pond. He was near the pond with a torch in his hand when he saw something moving in the water. A fish jumped out of the water, and Sejun was was so startled that he barely dodged its open mouth. The fish had jumped with too much power and found itself on land, unable to return to the water. This was the first time Se-Jean had seen a fish in the cave. He wondered if the fish was attracted to the light of the torch, and his intuition was proved correct. And just like that, Se-Jean discovered fish in the cave. He killed the fish and roasted it over the fire, even though he had no seasoning. The fish was really tasty, and Se-Jean found the rabbits drooling as he ate the fish and asking for their share. He was shocked because he had not expected rabbits to be meat-eaters, but since they were basically monsters, he thought it was natural. A few days later, the blue moon appeared once again, and Se-Jean realized that on this floor, the blue moon phenomenon occurred every 30 days. He had been relying on his laptop and power bank to charge his phone and keep track of the date, but eventually they too reached their limit. Unable to use his phone any longer, Se-Jean began marking the days on the cave wall with a stone. "So it's been 61 days, he said. A few days ago, something amazing had happened. Se-Jean had seen a tired male rabbit open the door of his house, and without wasting a moment, a group of baby rabbits bolted out. They were the children of the rabbit couple that had been recently born, and they had become fond of Se-Jean, who had become their uncle. They ran straight at Se-Jean and jumped on him, causing him to fall to the ground. They were really cute, and Se-Jean couldn't get enough of their cuteness, even as they nibbled at his face. He laughed and enjoyed their company. Se-Jean looked at the sleep-deprived husband rabbit and said that raising babies must be hard, but for now he would take care of the babies for a while, and the couple should relax and eat breakfast. The cherry tomato plants had started flowering, and Se-Jean took the baby rabbits with him to check them out. The babies frolicked around on the farm as Se-Jean inspected his plants. The flowers had bloomed, and even though they were tomato flowers, Se-Jean now thought he had a flower garden. To bear fruit, pollination was necessary, and he had to do it manually. Se-Jean used a small stick to artificially pollinate the flowers, but all the bending and working was taking a toll on his back. A baby rabbit put its face inside a flower and got pollen on its face. It sneezed, and Se-Jean started laughing. But then Se-Jean noticed something. The tomato plants had started to bear fruit. After so long, his hard work was starting to show some results. Se-Jean celebrated the first fruits of his cherry tomato plants and danced with the baby rabbits. The day before the blue moon, Se-Jean made preparations to survive it. He put out the fire and stored a small amount of burning leaves under huge boulders. He was wearing makeshift clothes made from onion leaves, thinking that it would be enough to stay warm and hidden. The rabbits also headed back to their homes as the time for the blue moon drew near. Something scary always happened whenever the blue moon occurred, but Se-Jean was confident that they would survive it like the previous ones. He thought it was going to be a piece of cake and went into hiding. The blue moon began, and monsters started screeching throughout the forest. Se-Jean was not afraid, but he was tired and hoped that the blue moon would end soon. To prepare for an unlikely situation, he had already hidden things with a strong odor and was now hiding in a corner. However, since it was hard to tell how much time had passed, he was growing tired of waiting. The monster cries did not help either. They were far away, but they could still make him shiver. As Se-Jean hoped that this blue moon would also pass without incident, he heard a loud roar. It was different and more intense than the voices of other monsters, almost as if it were close to him. Indeed, a huge monster was walking towards the cave, squashing full-grown trees beneath its feet. It approached the entrance to the cave, which was too small in comparison to its size. The monster stared down the hole, and inside, Se-Jean gaped at it. He was scared of the giant bear-like monster in front of him, but thankfully, the monster had not noticed him yet. Se-Jean thought he should hide in a better place before the monster spotted him. He was trembling as he picked up his bag and started moving quietly and slowly. However, taking the bag with him turned out to be a mistake. As he picked up his belongings, the things inside the bag dropped, creating a loud noise due to the empty water bottle. The monster's attention was attracted by the sound. Se-Jean stared in horror, first at his stuff, and then up at the beast, who was now trying to peek inside the cave. Se-Jean screamed in fear, and the bear roared in response. A few moments later, Se-Jean was found unconscious with the rabbits trying to wake him up. When the baby rabbits failed to rouse him, their father slapped Se-Jean, and he woke up. He was still afraid of what he had seen before passing out and asked the rabbits what had happened to the blue moon. As he looked around, he realized that it had ended. The husband rabbit told Se-Jean that he was unconscious when they found him and said that he had passed out when he saw the monster. Se-Jean wanted to know what had happened after that. He had been terrified and couldn't move when the monster tried to force its way into the cave, and he had passed out after the monster roared. Se-Jean remembered the incident and shivered. He had almost lost his life at the hands of that monster. Feeling cold cold, the wife rabbit created a large fire and a blanket of onion leaves. Sejun sat in front of the fire with the baby rabbits snuggled up to him. The wife rabbit also brought him roasted fish, and Sejun thanked her. As he ate, Sejun realized that the monster had noticed this plate. It may have been due to another monster or because it couldn't get inside the cave due to the small entrance, but the monster had left without causing harm. However, there was no guarantee that he would be safe if it returned. He thought he had gotten lucky this time, but it might go differently next time. After everything he had done to survive, he didn't want to die. He decided that the best course of action was to eat well and stay alive. While Sejun was eating, the husband rabbit approached him, wanting to show him something. Sejun followed him and found something unbelievable, a ripe cherry tomato. But it was nothing like he had expected. It was blue and glistening in the sunlight. Sejun was shocked, but the blue color wasn't the first thing he noticed about the fruit. He bent down and tried to pick up the large, ripe fruit, then wondered why it was blue. As he pondered this, a window appeared in front of Sejun, informing him that he had completed the quest to harvest the fruit containing the energy of the blue moon. Sejun was shocked. He couldn't believe that the thing in front of him was an actual message window. The message on the window changed, and now it said that the tower manager was interested in him because of his amazing achievements. It had been keeping a keen eye on Sejun, but it wasn't happy. Confused, Sejun wondered why the tower manager wouldn't be happy with him, and the husband rabbit didn't know what was going on either. Sejun learned that he was not a duly invited guest, and the tower manager had accepted it as a blunder. It wanted to eliminate Sejun. Shocked, he asked the window what it meant. Was it a mistake that he had ended up in the tower? He angrily said that if that were the case, he should be allowed to go home immediately. But the window said that the tower master wanted to kill Sejun to eradicate all proof of this mistake. Sejun was flabbergasted. He screamed at the screen, saying that he had completed a wonderful achievement, and instead of rewarding him, the manager wanted to kill him. The system window fell silent for a while, and Sejun wondered what was happening. The next message he received changed his mood from scared and angry to elated. The tower manager was awakening him. Sejun felt an aura surrounding him as soon as the message was displayed. He couldn't believe it, and confirmed with the window that he was officially awake in the tower. Eagerly, he awaited to see which job he would be assigned, hoping for something like a wizard. However, his assigned job was a tower farmer with a proficiency of F rank. All the joy and excitement left Sejun's face, and he went blank. The windows continued to give him messages about his job. He would never get sick, be close to nature, and gain experience points by harvesting crop. Sejun was shocked. There was no job class other than a warrior and a magician inside the tower. How could he be a farmer? He commanded the system to open his status window and found that his talent was ordinary, and his stats were all at 1. He stared at his status window, but the only thing he could focus on was his ordinary talent. Sejun imagined a far-fetched scenario of a future where he succeeded in clearing the tower. He was the main guest of a late-night talk show, and the host introduced him as the man who cleared the tower despite having ordinary talent. The host asked the audience to applaud for Sejun, and then asked him what his job was. Sejun acted cool and said he was a tower farmer, and everyone found him attractive. But even in this imaginary scenario, Sejun was still a farmer, which frustrated him. Yelling in frustration, Sejun tried to smash the blue tomato to the ground, saying he didn't need it. But then he looked at the scared and concerned faces of the rabbits and stopped. Sejun was taken aback by the influence his actions had on his friends and looked at his farm, then at the tomato in his hand. He wasn't alone in growing it. Everyone had worked hard to reach this point. Sejun decided that he would continue farming, and the rabbits were happy. Sejun looked at the blue tomato in his hand, and an information window opened up telling him about the tomato. It was a magical cherry tomato imbued with the power of the blue moon. Not only was it tasty and nutritious, but when consumed, it would increase one's MP by 0.05 permanently. Sejun was shocked. The tomato in his hand was actually an item. Even though the effect was small, it was permanent and could boost one's stats. Sejun was amazed by himself. He had grown something as great as this. But the tower manager was watching him and wasn't satisfied with how things were going. As Sejun thanked the rabbits and celebrated with them for achieving this feat, a message window popped up in front of him. A quest had been triggered. He had to offer the blue cherry tomato to the manager. The reward for the quest was a job-related skill, and the penalty for refusing was death. Sejun read the entire message, And when he saw that the penalty was death, he became scared. He asked the window if it was a joke out of anger. He accused the admin of blackmailing him and using the name of a quest to justify his actions. Sejun told the admin that if he wanted the blue tomato, he should ask for it properly. If the admin played dirty games like this and made it look like he was giving Sejun options, that would not be good. Sejun was a bit relieved after venting his anger, but then he realized the death penalty and politely offered the blue tomato. The tomato in Sejun's hands vanished, and he received a message that he had completed the quest. The next window displayed the quest reward, and Sejun was excited to receive it. He knew it was a job-related skill, but since he had been focusing solely on the death penalty, he had momentarily forgotten about it. Sejun flattered the tower manager, calling him generous. Then, he decided to check what kind of skill he had obtained and opened the quest reward. The reward was the skill sowing at level 1. This skill slightly increased the probability of germination when a seed was planted. Sejun didn't know how to react, but he was certainly disappointed. However, he consoled himself, saying that since his job was that of a tower farmer, he couldn't expect much from the reward anyway. He went to the dark parts of the cave with a torch and encountered a fish that jumped out towards the flame. Sejun used a club made of green onion stems and leaves to hit it towards the land. The fish died, and Sejun learned that it was a piranha he had killed. The information window informed him that he had gained 2 experience points for it. This was the 5th fish Sejun had caught, and with that, he now had 10 experience points. After awakening as a farmer, Sejun was able to collect experience points. He caught several piranhas every day for several days and reached level 2. He wanted to catch more of them, but he knew it was a bad idea. He thought he shouldn't kill a living thing without reason. Besides, he obtained valuable protein from the fish. If he killed all of them and their population went extinct, he wouldn't be able to eat them again. Sejun roasted the fish and called his friends to eat. The baby rabbits were much hungrier than their parents. They ran towards Sejun, who was like their human uncle, and he gave them fish wrapped in onion leaves. They had grown a little and started eating a lot more than before. Sejun asked them to leave some food for their mom and dad as well. There was another benefit Sejun received from awakening. He could get information about the rabbits. He gave them their share, and the rabbits happily accepted it. They were farmer white rabbits, and Sejun had a few ideas about how they ended up with him. They were a type of monster he had never heard of outside the tower. Based on their name, Sejun realized that they specialized in farming, not fighting. He thought that this must be the reason they were not widely known. The rabbits began flirting as they ate, and Sejun watched them, wondering what had happened to them. He assumed that they must have lost their farms, and, after wandering for some time, found this cave and him. He wanted to know if the rabbits had a hometown to return to, but he couldn't understand them, and they couldn't understand him beyond basic farming terminology. Sejun expressed this to the husband rabbit, saying that he wished they could understand each other, but the rabbit didn't understand human speech either, and was confused. Now that they were done eating, Sejun said they should head back to the farm. Today was an important day for all of them, and the husband rabbit was also excited. They reached the farm to find the cherry tomatoes perfectly ripe. Sejun was amazed to see them. They were even better than the tomatoes he brought with him. The rabbits were also pleased to see the red tomato fruits. Sejun grew sentimental as he said that now was the time to harvest them. They had worked so hard to grow them. They had harvested one after the blue moon, but it didn't count. Sejun was nervous as he went to harvest the first tomato. His hand trembled, and the rabbits watched him anxiously too. However, Sejun picked a fruit that easily separated from the branch. He exclaimed that this was his first cherry tomato and it had ripened so well. The tomatoes brought more good news. Sejun saw information windows telling him that he had harvested a well-ripened magical cherry tomato and would receive 10 experience points for it. Sejun was surprised to learn that these tomatoes were also magical, just like the blue tomato. He read their information and discovered that when consumed, this tomato would decompose 10 grams of fat and increase 0.1 MP magic points for 10 minutes. The MP effect could be stacked up to 10 times, with a maximum time limit of 1 hour. Although this information was impressive, Sejun's name was listed as the cultivator of the tomato, and it was mentioned that it was an E-grade item with a shelf life of 30 days. Sejun was impressed that even though the effect of one tomato was quite small, if 10 of them were eaten together, they could boost MP by 1. He wondered if the other tomatoes were also the same, and set out to harvest them. He harvested the tomatoes, and each one was also a ripe magical cherry tomato, except for one that was unripe. He received only 7 experience points for the unripe tomato. Sejun was taken aback by his mistake, but he still got 7 experience points. and the unripe fruit returned to being a normal tomato. Sejun now understood that he had to take care to harvest only well-ripened fruits to get them as items. It was harder than he thought, but Sejun persevered, and his level increased. He was already level 4. Sejun thought he had harvested enough crops for the day. He took a tomato and said he should have a taste, but the rabbits stomped their feet aggressively, and Sejun looked at them. They were angry, and he apologized. Sejun offered the tomatoes to them, saying they had achieved this together, so they should reap the rewards together, too. The husband rabbit was furious, but picked up a tomato. Sejun said they should celebrate the successful harvest and everyone should eat. When Sejun ate the tomato, his mind was blown. He felt as if he were lying on soft green grass, looking up at the clear night sky. Then, suddenly, a flare flew into the sky and exploded like a firework. Sejun got up and looked at it with his mouth open. The fresh scent of grass and the sweet and sour taste of the tomato mixed with the scent. Sejun felt that this feeling was similar to the fireworks in the middle of a summer festival. Sejun shed a tear of joy as he remembered the summer and felt it in the tomato. The wife rabbit asked her husband if he knew what Sejun was saying, and he had no idea. The rabbits took the remaining tomatoes and stored them in a makeshift storage facility, covering the tomatoes with onion leaves. Sejun lay down and watched them. He thought the rabbit kids were now big enough to help their parents. He was ready to sleep on mattresses and use an eye mask, both made of onion leaves. Sejun said they were indeed the children of Farmer White Rabbits. Sejun knew he should go to sleep now, as he was feeling sleepy, and was sure that when he woke up tomorrow, another wonderful day would greet him. Sejun lay down and immediately began to snore. But then, a quest was issued for him. He must offer 100 magical cherry tomatoes to the tower manager. The reward was a job-related skill, and the penalty was the same as before: death. However, Sejun was deeply asleep and did not notice the quest window. Suddenly, it began ringing loudly like an alarm, and Sejun was forcibly woken up. Annoyed, he offered 100 tomatoes to the manager. The manager, satisfied with Sejun's offering, gave him the reward for the quest. Sejun complained that the manager was forcing him to do things, and that he better receive something more useful this time. Upon opening the reward, Sejun discovered that his new skill was Harvest Level 1. This skill enabled him to obtain harvested crops in optimum condition, even if they were slightly overripe or underripe. Initially, Sejun was disappointed and questioned why he needed a harvesting skill. However, as he harvested tomatoes with his husband Rabbit, he found the skill to be more useful than he initially thought. Whenever he harvested slightly overripe or underripe tomatoes, the skill would activate, perfecting them to their optimum condition. As he did this, the proficiency of the harvest skill increased, along with Sejun's experience points. Sejun admitted that since he did not have to wait for the cherry tomatoes to ripen, it was easier and faster for him. After they finished harvesting, Sejun told the husband rabbit that they should take the rest of the harvest home. But just then, he received another quest. Sejun had anticipated it, but he was not expecting the quest to have no reward. Sejun called the manager a thief for giving no reward, but since his last reward had helped him significantly, Sejun could at least give him that much. As he offered the tomatoes to the manager, the husband rabbit was shocked. But Sejun did not know that he was entering a vicious cycle. The manager issued quests again and again, with increasing demands and greed. The required number of tomatoes kept increasing, and finally, the manager reached new heights of shamelessness. The new quest was triggered, and Sejun had to offer 500 tomatoes to the manager for no reward. The penalty for refusing was still death. Sejun, infuriated, clearly refused to comply. After calmly refusing, Sejun threw a tantrum, stating that the manager had already taken hundreds of tomatoes. He needed to eat too, and so did the rabbits. The tower manager replied that it was the farmer's problem, not his, and told Sejun to stop protesting and give him the cherry tomatoes. This irritated Sejun even more. He said that he had worked hard for days and suffered a lot to harvest those tomatoes. The tower manager insisted that Sejun's job was as simple as sowing seeds and asked him not to overreact over something that was not a big deal. This was where the tower manager crossed the line. He should listen to his orders. Sejun replied that this was the reason he was not giving the tomatoes. The manager forcibly made him do this and did not even appreciate his efforts. Moreover, the compensation for the exploitation was also too low. Since it was the manager of the tower, this proved that it was a bad employer. Se-Jan's words and the hurt in his eyes shocked the tower manager. It hadn't realized this before and tried to apologize, but Se-Jan was already eating the tomatoes while teasing the manager. The manager got angry, telling Se-Jan it was upset because he ate the tomatoes himself. The manager threatened to kill Se-Jan on the spot if he didn't complete the request, but Se-Jan acted as if the manager was no big deal and gave him just 5 tomatoes. He said that he would give the rest later since he needed them to feed the kids, too. Behind him, 2 baby rabbits were fighting for a tomato as their father tried to calm them. The tomato vanished, and the tower manager said that it would compromise this time. Se-Jan thanked the manager, and the message window vanished. He laughed to himself, realizing that the manager was about to apologize just now. But then he said out loud that the tower manager was simpler than he thought. It is now the 91st day, and the 4th blue moon event occurs. Se-Jan is sitting in a dark corner eating cherry tomatoes. He had heard that people with high MP could endure the roars of monsters to a certain level, which is why he was eating the tomatoes. Still, he hopes that nothing like the last time happens again. As Se-Jan wishes for time to pass quickly, his plants begin to gleam in the blue light. Se-Jan realizes what is going on as the energy of the light enters a tomato, turning it blue. Se-Jan cannot wait to harvest it, but he notices that the tomato plants are not the only ones being blessed. Even the sweet potato leaves are getting illuminated. The desire to check on them overcomes Se-Jan, and he walks towards his farm. He digs out the sweet potatoes with his bare hands and is amazed at the results. He now has a blue sweet potato in his hand, filled with the energy of the blue moon. When consumed, it would increase one's strength by 0.5 points permanently. The system window informs him that he has harvested a sweet potato with the energy of the blue moon, which has gained him a lot of experience. The proficiency of the skill harvest has also increased, and now it will be leveled up. Se-Jan then looks at the blue tomato and harvests it. As he holds the sweet potato in one hand and the tomato in the other, Se-Jan thinks he is holding the world in his hands. But that happiness is soon disturbed by a quest Se-Jan was expecting, and there are not 1 but 2 quests. Se-Jan has to offer both products imbued with the energy of the blue moon to the manager. There is no reward for either of the quests, and the penalty is death. Se-Jan thinks that the manager is really pushing it with 2 quests at a time. If Se-Jan refuses, the manager might just kill him this time. However, Se-Jan has a way to solve this issue. He offers 500 tomatoes to the manager, saying that he needs to complete the previous quest first. The manager quickly accepts the tomatoes and says that he is happy with the cherry tomatoes. But then the manager asks Se-Jan why he has not given the energy-filled crops to it already. Se-Jan apologizes for calling the manager simple earlier, asking them to let this slide for today and promising to give them later. The manager sighs and accepts this condition. Se-Jan then looks at the items in his hands and wonders what he should do with them, and that is not even a question. He tosses the blue tomato into his mouth and shudders. He could feel the summer festival and the fireworks in his mouth again, almost as if it were the first time he ate the tomatoes. The system window tells him that his MP has permanently increased by 0.5 due to eating the tomato. But then he wraps the sweet potato in onion leaves and throws it into the fire. He thinks it would be even better if he had tin foil with him, but the multi-purpose onion leaves are good enough. Se-Jan is happy and says that the time spent waiting for delicious food is the happiest time. The blue moon passes and the rabbits also come out. They all have questions for Se-Jan as they see him cooking something. He says that they had great timing as he was just about to call them. Se-Jan then excitedly says that he presents to them the sweet potato with the energy of the blue moon, and its delicious smell makes the rabbits drool. Se-Jan says that it is not much, but they should share it. But the husband rabbit stands in front of his family and stops them from taking up Se-Jan's offer. They are saddened as he tells them something, and Se-Jan realizes what the rabbit is saying. He wants Se-Jan to eat the sweet potato himself, as there is only one. Se-Jan is touched and thanks the husband rabbit for being the only one thinking about it. But even as Se-Jan agrees to eat the sweet potato alone, he is hiding the fact that he has already secretly eaten it. Se-Jan peels the sweet potato and takes a bite, but it is too hot. hot, and he burns his tongue, spitting out whatever he just bit. The sweet potato in his hand falls to the ground as Sejan screams about burning his tongue and scalding his palate. The rabbits watch the sweet potato on the ground. The husband rabbit reaches down to grab a piece of the sweet potato, but his children swipe everything before him and then eat it. However, it is too hot for them, and they too spit it out. The baby rabbits start crying, and the husband rabbit is dejected that he got nothing, and that the sweet potato got wasted. This is another entry in Sejan's diary in the tower. He ate a fiery meal today, a little too hot for his liking. A few days later, Sejan is telling the baby rabbits that they are going to plant sweet potato sprouts from now on. The rabbits are confused, and Sejan says that it was the thing they were eating right now. Sejan scolds them and says that the baby rabbits are prohibited from eating the sweet potato sprouts for the time being. These words come as a devastating shock to the rabbits. The sweet potato sprouts have been their favorite snacks lately, and now they are trying to protest against Sejan's decision. All of them have different reactions to the order, and Sejan says that no matter how they complain, his decision is final. He thinks that there will be nothing left to plant if the babies keep on eating the sprouts. Sejun tries to convince the rabbits by saying that they will be having even better sweet potatoes for dinner, but they have to help him plant the sweet potato sprouts before that. In return, he would give them a special snack. Sejan has decided to expand the farm area to cultivate sweet potatoes, and for that, he needs the baby rabbits to cooperate with him. As soon as he tells them about the special snacks, they look at him with drooling mouths and gleaming eyes. Sejan tells them to start working, and the rabbits carry the sprouts to plant them. Their mother is harvesting the green onions, and Sejan asks her to leave one plant. It will then bloom a flower, and Sejan could get seeds from it. He has reached the conclusion that he needs to plant a seed for something to become an item. In the newly expanded farm area, the baby rabbits are hard at work. One of them digs holes, and the other plants the sprouts in them. But in a corner, one of the babies is too greedy to part with his favorite snack. He cannot control his urge and takes a bite of the leaf. Reacting to that, his father smacks him for doing something like that. Sejan is also harvesting the tomatoes, and he gets a lot of messages from the tower system. He had a little bit of experience, but it was the final bit he needed to level up. Now that he has reached a designated level, he has ranked up from an F-rank farmer to an E-rank farmer. His job level has increased, and his job characteristics will be strengthened because of this. Sejan is also glad to know that he has reached level 8. To celebrate, he decides to make the snacks a bit earlier. He takes the cherry tomatoes and puts them on a skewer. At the same time, he gets a message from the tower manager. The manager was keeping an eye on Sejun and what he was going to cook today. The message disappears soon, and Sejun thinks that this was quite a harmless action. He begins roasting the cherry tomatoes and then calls the rabbits to start eating. They leave their work and come running to him, and Sujin presents them with special roasted cherry tomatoes on bone skewers. The information window for the roasted tomatoes also opens. The skewer used by Sejun was made from cleaned piranha bones, and because of the cooking, the tomatoes were softer and sweeter. The rabbits take a skewer each, and they look really excited to eat it. Sejun tells them that it is easy to carry around and eat in this form, but he also warns them that it is quite hot, and they should blow on it before eating. However, the rabbits are already enjoying it. Sejun then says that since the sweet potato sprouts were already planted, they should dig some sweet potatoes for dinner. As Sejun digs the sweet potatoes, he finds 5 sweet potatoes in a plant. He reads the information about them, and they are called strength sweet potatoes. They have similar effects to the magical tomato, but with strength. Anyone who eats them would gain an additional 0.1 strength for 10 minutes. And this effect can be stacked up to 10 times in an hour. The other effect is that it would break down 10 grams of fat and help with bowel movements, and this bonus would also apply to those who have not awakened yet. Sejun counts that he now has 15 sweet potatoes, which means he got 5 potatoes for each one he sowed, and that is pretty good for a first harvest. But then Sejun spots a fallen potato sprout. He plants it, thinking it would be a waste to leave even a single sprout, but then he gets messages from the system saying that the proficiency of the skill sowing is increasing because of this action. Now, Sejun realizes that even this qualifies as sowing, and he also realizes that he must plant all the sprouts himself to increase his skill level. Sejun asks the baby rabbits to stop in a hurry because now he wants to do it himself. Inside its office, the manager tries to replicate what Sejun just did. It has cherry tomatoes on a skewer, and they are roasted over a fire. The manager eats the tomatoes and immediately spits some of them out since they are burned and bitter. But then it ponders what was wrong with its tomatoes. the humans seem to eat them fondly. Then the sweet taste of the tomatoes spreads through its mouth, and the manager realizes how delicious they are. Now it uses the magic crystal ball to see what Sejun is doing at the moment. When the manager finds him eating sweet potatoes with the rabbits, it gets angry. It screams, saying, "How could those punks start eating sweet potatoes without me? I am the great black dragon alien Friton." The manager sends a quest to Sejun immediately, demanding one roasted sweet potato. There are no rewards for this quest, and the punishment for refusing is death. Sejun is not in the mood to do the quest and tells the manager to postpone it. The manager is shocked and says that it wants the sweet potatoes right now. If Sejun does not give them, there will be consequences. Sejun says that there is only one sweet potato left. He asks the manager what it could offer in reward. The manager considers it for a while and then revises the quest. A reward is added for another job-related skill. Sejun thinks that this reward is good enough and offers the sweet potato to the manager. He opens the reward and finds that it is a level 1 seed store. When this skill is activated, Sejun can buy a product at the seed shop every 30 days. Sejun is overjoyed. A seed store means that he can purchase things inside the tower that are similar to what other awakened individuals have. He says that this was an amazing reward, and the tower manager should have given it to him earlier. Sejun activates the skill, and the seed store is open. Before that, it checks the transaction history of Sejun and finds that there were no previous transactions. But thinking about the transactions, Sejun arrives at an important question. How should he make purchases when he has no money? But then he gets another message that the store will offer entry-level services to the customer, Sejun. He is the first rookie-tier customer at the seed store, and because of that, he would get 1 tower coin added to his accounts. At the seed store, a tower coin appears in front of Sejun, and he is shocked. He says that the seed store is the kindest and the best. The tower coin is a currency used inside the tower, but in the outside world, the cost of each tower coin is 1,000,000 won. Sejun opens the seed store to see what he can buy there. The message window tells him that for the rookie tier, he could see 3 random types of seeds, and at his current level, Sejun could only purchase 1 of them. The 3 types of seeds for this time are shown, and Sejun sees that he can buy 1,000 seeds of either red pepper, cabbage, or carrots for 0.1 tower coin each. Sejun thinks that the name Seed Store is quite fitting as it only has seeds. But then he looks at the price and thinks about the outside world's value of the tower coin. He is getting 1,000 seeds for 100,000 won, which is very expensive. Sejun considers what he should choose. Red pepper and cabbage could be a good combo to make kimchi, but he cannot buy them together, nor does he have the resources to process them here. The only option left is carrots. As soon as he says carrots, the attention of all the rabbits turns to Sejun. He asks them what is wrong, and the rabbits try to tell him that they want carrots. Sejun sees their excited expressions and says carrots again, getting the same reaction as before. He is enjoying this a bit too much, and the husband rabbit kicks him in the face for wasting time. Sejun purchases the carrot seeds for 0.1 tower coin and receives 1 seed store mile. The mileage can be used to raise the level of his seed store, and he needs 100 points to reach the next level. Sejun receives the seeds in a fancy pouch and thinks that the pouch is more expensive than the seeds themselves. But then he sees a message from the manager saying that it is satisfied with Sejun's purchase. Sejun makes a face and asks why it is getting satisfied. This is another entry in his diary. Now he has acquired carrot seeds by trading at the seed store. Sejun is excited to plant carrots, and so are the rabbits. But someone else is watching them from a distance. A large and cute bee observes Sejun and the rabbits as they celebrate acquiring carrot seeds. The bee, intrigued by the scene, hovers closer to get a better look at the new seeds and the joyous celebration of Sejun and the rabbits. So, what adventures await for Sejun? We will get to know in the next episode.